Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I want you to imagine walking into a history class and learning about the great struggles for freedom, the fight against tyranny, the civil rights movement, the fight for women's suffrage. These are powerful stories of courage and change. But what if a significant part of your own identity, or the identity of your classmates, was entirely absent from that narrative? What if the struggle for your very existence was met with a silence? Today, we're going to discuss a critical issue in education: how we teach the history of marginalized communities, specifically the fight for queer liberation. We will explore a powerful teaching method from the United States, connect it to the constitutional promises here in Colombia, examine the current state of Colombian schools, and finally discuss how we can build an educational system that includes everyone. All right, so let's look at a practical and revolutionary approach to this problem. In an article titled Teaching the Fight for Queer Liberation, educator Nick Palazzolo addresses the curricular silence surrounding LGBTQ, their history. He argues that we must move beyond simply making queer people visible and instead engage students in the real strategic and moral dilemmas faced by activists throughout the years. Palazzolo designed a dilemma-based simulation for high school students. In this simulation, students don't just read about history, they participate in it. They role-play as activists navigating 6 key historical strategy meetings, from the oppressive era of the 1950s through the early 2000s. This curriculum takes students through the darkness of the Lavender Scare, the explosive rebellion of the Stonewall riots, the devastating activism of the HIV/AIDS crisis, and the long legal fight for same-sex marriage. The core lesson is profound. Progress is not a straight line. It's a messy, difficult process, often marked by backsliding and retaliation. By engaging in this simulation, students learn that history is made by people making difficult choices, and they develop a fuller sense of how power and sexuality shape our world today. So, how does this relate to us here in Colombia? This framework is incredibly relevant to the national journey toward a pluralist society. The turning point was in the 1991 Constitution. The Constitution officially recognized Colombia as a multi-ethnic and multicultural nation. For the first time, it acknowledged rights of all people to live equally and develop their personality freely, including the LGBTI community. This has been a monumental shift. However, it's crucial to understand the term interculturality. Often, in Latin America, we associate this word with indigenous peoples. While that is essential, the concept is broader. Interculturality inherently includes any ethnic or cultural group that has been the object of discrimination. The fight for queer rights is, therefore, a legitimate subject for intercultural education. As the articles by Laurent and Munoz emphasize, a state built on law and justice cannot truly function if the claims and identities of diverse communities are ignored in the classroom. Palazzolo's work gives us the tools to break that silence and fulfill the constitutional promise of recognition for all. We must acknowledge that a constitutional promise is not the same as a lived reality. The current state of Colombian education reflects a struggle to move from integrationist past to a pluralist present. For over a century, under the 1886 Constitution, Colombian schools enforced a civilizing discourse. This imposed a single religion, a single language, and a single worldview. Unfortunately, remnants of this unifying mindset persist today. They manifest as intolerance and subtle discrimination. where difference is often met with suspicion rather than curiosity. This legacy contributes to severe educational inequity. Marginalized groups in Colombia continue to face what we call statistic invisibility. They aren't counted, so their needs aren't met. They suffer from higher rates of truancy and grades well below the national average. While the General Education Law, Law 115 of 1994, provides for ethnic education and intercultural principles, these often remain projects on paper. They're beautiful ideas that never come to life in the daily reality of our classrooms. There's a significant gap between the rhetoric of inclusion and the practice of exclusion. Well, how do we bridge this gap? How can the educational system face this issue head on? Drawing from both Palazzolo's U.S. simulation and the Colombian reflections on interculturality, we can identify a clear path forward. First, we need a humanist reorientation. Schools need to shift away from this purely economic or utilitarian model and move toward a humanist model that seeks to reduce socioeconomic and cultural differences. We must actively work to not reproduce existing social prejudices. Second, we must embrace interactive pedagogy. The old and unfortunately common model of passive learning, students sitting in rows, memorizing facts, is insufficient for building a democratic society. We need to implement simulations and role plays like the ones used for queer liberation. This allows students to learn how to problem solve and make decisions as a community. It fosters solidarity, empathy, and a deep understanding of democratic values. Third, we must strategically use integrated ICT. Information and communication technologies should be used not just as tools for information, but as collaborative tools. They can create virtual and physical spaces for dialogue, allowing students to exchange diverse cultural perspectives and break down the walls of isolation. Fourth, we need specific teacher training. You can have the best curriculum in the world, but it's worthless without a properly trained teacher. The system must prioritize the formation of educators who are specifically trained in interculturality, capable of teaching in the specific cultural context of their students, and competent in navigating sensitive topics with respect. Finally, and most importantly, we need curricular inclusion of history. We must explicitly include the history of marginalized movements, including the fight for queer liberation. As Palazzolo argues, this isn't just for students who identify as queer, it is for their straight allies too. When we study this history, we all learn how to examine how power and sexuality shape our current reality. We all learn that history is not just about the victors, but about the struggle for justice for all. By reforming our pedagogy, training our teachers, and embracing a true humanist model, we can create a generation of students who not only understand the past, but are equipped to build a more just, empathetic, and truly pluralist future. Thank you very much.